You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Friday. We are back with preview situation. That's right. After so long of not having games, we have games once again. We watched Penn State pull one out against Purdue last night. I'm assuming we're going to watch Michigan State lose a really weird game to Western Michigan. Probably not, but that's at least what I'm going to say. We're going to bring in our best friend, literally the best friend of the show has ever had. And that's Mr. Jake Butt, the Mackey Award-winning tight end, and now Big Ten Network analyst. That's not something we have been able to say out of all of the 30-something shows that we did over the course of the last year. That's the first time we're able to say that, Jake.
Yes. Across the universe, though, Isaiah, they are related. You know, it was the springboard of the of our podcast last year that helped, springboard this role. I'm also going to be with Bally Sports doing a show covering all of college football on Mondays and Thursdays, which I would imagine for Michigan fans will heavily include Michigan, as I expect them to have a successful year this year. But yeah, man, it's great. It's great. Lot goes into this. Like, yes, it's a really cool job, but don't get it twisted. I'm not just up there, BSing you. Like I'm putting in a lot of work researching it. Like I literally, I don't even know what to talk about with my fiance half the time, because all I have is just names and narratives and teams fluttering around in my head. So it's a lot that goes into it, man, but I'm excited about this fall.
Well, I expect that you lead off every broadcast by saying, big shout out to X's and O's, Locked On Wolverines. It's all that stuff. I will tell you this, and I will acknowledge it here because we only acknowledged it once last year, but so many people have been clamoring for some big butthole.
I know. I saw that on Twitter. We'll give the people what they want.
Exactly.
This is the first serving.
Let's discuss your journey before we get into any preview stuff, because I don't know if people recognize exactly how this ended up working. But I reached out to you, it couldn't have been more than a week after you had announced you were retiring from the NFL, and asked, do you have any media aspirations? And it's all kind of taken off from there. Yeah. Not just here, but I mean, you've done, lots of things from the local level to the regional level before you became a little bit more of a national presence, which that starts now.
Yeah.
So what has this all been like for you? Like, did you think a year ago before I reached out to you and said, is this something you're interested in? Is this something that you had thought about at all? What was going through your mind?
I think I told you at the time when you asked me that, do I have media aspirations? And I was like, I don't know if I have media aspirations, but I know for certain that I don't not want to get into media, So I'm like, hey, let me just explore things that I think I might want to do. Like, I'm not going to go lay roofing for a living. I know that's something I don't want to do. Like, I'm not going to go, be a plumber. No offense, that's just not for me. But I knew that from in terms of, media standpoint, it was something that, it did interest me. I didn't know if it was something I certainly wanted to do. So said yes to you, and it kind of built out from there. You got me some gigs with Sirius XM. They started asking, they're like, hey man, you sound pretty good. Are you doing any of this? It built up till finally, like, a couple of agents heard me on the radio, and they're like, okay, this guy sounds really good. Some of them had Michigan ties, reached out to me like, hey, like, if this is something you're interested in, I'd love to represent you. And from there, it just called the Michigan Spring Game. And that one was really like the springboard that really opened up a lot of doors for me. It's a lot that goes into these games, man. It's a lot that goes into a lot of research, a lot of prep and practice, making sure you have the names right. I just remember my parents would be at every single game, but they always recorded the games and they were going to go back home and watch it. My name's pretty easy to pronounce, but that's a truth for most parents, and there's pride in your last name. So you want to do right by the players and the coaches and anybody that's associated with either team. ensuring that their name's right. There's some tough names out there. Oluwatimi, got it down, baby. I've said it a number of times, but it's great, man. It's built out now. And, the position I'm in very early in this career is certainly encouraging. And I take it very seriously. Understanding that this is essentially a dream job. A lot of people would love to have this opportunity, and I don't take that lightly. So taking my preparation seriously, I'm my own worst critic. A lot of people have reached out and said I'm doing a good job on Twitter and some of my Big Ten studio shows, but like there's something in my gut. It's like, man, I know I can be better right now. Like I want to be better. Same way when I was a player, man, like even as a freshman, it's like, hey man, you're a freshman, remember, but I'm like, man, but I know I can be one of the best right now. So like that always propels you and pushes you to go forward. So that's the fun part and the challenge in it.
I can attest to your drive, and it's been fun watching you grow over the course of the last year. Didn't require much, if any, coaching whatsoever. And anything that was like a coaching moment was more kind of on my end, essentially. So it's no surprise to me that this is where you're at. And there was certainly a sense of pride for me when I saw you, saw you sitting there with Dave Rebson watching Big Ten Today. And you were like, hey, tune in. And I'm like, I'll probably get to it. And the truth of the matter is I sat there and watched it live, the whole thing straight up. And, because I had to, and you did a remarkable job, and everything that you've done has been remarkable. So I'm very proud of you. I'm very excited to watch you continue to grow. What are your thoughts of, I mean, you get the first week here to not call a game, but your first game outside of the Michigan and Minnesota spring games that you get to call is Michigan at Hawaii at Michigan. I wish it was Michigan at Hawaii, except for I don't want a 10-hour flight. But how does that feel? Kind of that idea of like, I'm going to be calling my first regular season game at my alma mater against a team that it's Michigan versus a team that you were a part of playing Hawaii. It was kind of that first big revelation in 2016 that your team was really, really good. So that's got to spark some emotion for you as well. Not just the fact that you're calling Michigan, but it's a game that's like it was a first for you 6 years ago, and it ends up being a first for you again now.
I know, man. It's almost like you couldn't have even dreamed it up better. Starting the first audition was really the spring game, and starting with that, the familiarity was great. It was strange being in the stadium and like smelling the smells and walking down the tunnel and walking around, but kind of being on the other side, man. There's truly nothing like playing and wearing and representing the winged helmet. But now I get to do it with my analysis in the booth, and it's my first game, but boy, what a great week where we're going to have JJ McCarthy's first start as well. So the narratives flying around that game are going to be phenomenal, and get a chance to provide his analysis. I'm sure there's going to be some awesome highlight plays out there. And for Michigan to start off the season strong, coming off such a successful season last year, like the expectations are through the roof, the way the schedule shakes out. It's like, hey man, the sky's the limit for this team. So to get to cover them early in the season is going to be really, really awesome.
Well, speaking of Michigan, let's get to them here in just a moment. Let's actually get into the preview of it all, because Michigan is playing a game tomorrow on Saturday against my mom's alma mater, kind of alma mater. She didn't graduate from there, but Colorado State, which if you didn't see, and I know you did, Jake, if you didn't see the video I posted on my personal YouTube of me asking my mom questions to preview Colorado State, it is a worthwhile watch, in my opinion. It's kind of a prank on my end that I made public.
What's she rooting for?
I mean, she doesn't care, to be honest. She's not a sports person at all. A lot of the time she knows basketball, and I don't know how. Like, she'll just rattle off like basketball players that are like known, and I'm like, how, like even obscure ones, and I'm like, how did you even know that? But generally, she's not a sports person. So she did say on there that hopefully Michigan wins, which I took as like, wow, the Colorado State expert is rooting for Michigan.
Nice.
So, no, she doesn't care about sports at all. Which this next week we've got, we're going to do the same thing, but I've got Sarah coming on because she's coming to the Hawaii game. She's shooting the Hawaii game with me, and she doesn't know anything about football. So she wants me to ask her football questions, although she actually said, she's like, you can ask me things like what's a tight end, and I'll be like, I don't know, it's a guy that's an end on the end of the line. And I'm like, you actually kind of nailed it.
Yeah, you're right. That's how I would start to describe it, most likely.
I don't even know how she knows what a line is. So there are more questions that are raised from that. But anyway, let's get to Michigan here in just 1 second. But before we do, listen, are you one of those people that thinks it's okay to drive stoned? What's the worst that can happen? You end up driving below the speed limit. It's no big deal, right? Wrong. The truth is your reaction time slow way down when you're high. You not only put yourself in danger, but everyone around you. Talk about a buzzkill. Stop kidding yourself. It's not okay to drive high. If you've been using marijuana in any form, do not get behind the wheel. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high. Get a DUI. All right, Jake, we are finally going to get into the nitty gritty. Not even really the nitty gritty, because like there's an element to playing Colorado State where it's not like, we're not going to get into things like, Ohio State week. It's like, all right, how's Michigan going to match up against Jackson Smith and Jigba? How is the pass rush going to match up against that offensive line? Are they going to be able to get to CJ Stroud? Those are the types of questions that people are particularly interested in when it comes to playing a team like Colorado State. So as a former player, I think Colorado State's maybe a little bit better than at least I think it will be better than people anticipate, in large part because of Jay Norvell, all the transfers that they brought in, lots of production from the wide receiver position that are coming in. But how, as a former player, do you get amped up for a game like this? One in which people are expecting you to win by 4 to 5 touchdowns. I mean, everyone's a pretty good player if they're playing in college football to some degree. So how was it that you don't overlook a team like this?
Because football's so hard, man. It's a 24/7, 365-day job. So you work year round, and then you only get really 10, 12, 14 opportunities in the fall to go out there and show it. So like, man, you're an entertainer. This is your opportunity to go do it in front of 100,000 plus fans, in front of millions watching at home. So yeah, you can never take that lightly. And again, it's like the culmination. Every Saturday is the culmination of all the work you put in that builds on itself throughout the years, for the upperclassmen that have been doing it for so long. It's like, man, you can never take it lightly when you step on that field. I also know injuries happen. So like, man, don't ever look an opportunity you have to take that field and put something on tape to show who you really are. Now, in terms of this game, being on offense, this is usually the case, but, I feel the better team should be able to force the issue. So Michigan should force Colorado State to be reactive. So as we get into the analysis, it's like, this is more about what Michigan's going to try to do in forcing Colorado State to react. If Colorado State wants to pull off the upset, they're going to have to find a way to push the issue to have, Michigan react. And in these kind of games, if you want to have an upset, it's so important that you start fast early in the game. So you look for Michigan on the flip side to take control and take charge early in the game as well, to kind of confirm the belief that Colorado State already has. Hey, we can't hang with these guys. You want to confirm that belief as soon as possible, so then you can go out there and have a dominant performance.
And it kind of leads to the point that I have when it comes to a game like this, which is this game is all about Michigan. It's not about Colorado State. Even though I do think I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a 3-score game. I wouldn't be surprised if this looked a lot like Middle Tennessee versus Michigan in 2019, where I think that was 49-24 or something like that. It wouldn't surprise me. But at the same time, I look at this as being a game that's more about Michigan, really these first 3 games. So what, with that in mind, what, I know you'll be watching from home, but what are you looking for the most from the Wolverines in a game like this? Because obviously there's a lot of things that could happen, but what would give you confidence that this team does have the potential to repeat what it did a year ago?
There's a few things, and we could start with the offensive side of the ball. Coordinating an offense is a lot bigger a challenge than most people think. And, I've been on teams that had a lot of offensive talent and we underperformed. And a lot of that comes down to scheme and timing of play calls and putting, realizing the strengths of your offense and how those play against the weaknesses of the defense. There's a lot that goes into it. So you have two new coordinators, Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss. Who's going to be calling the plays? How is their chemistry working on in an unscripted 60-minute game? It's out there. You're reacting. You got to stay level-headed. There's a lot that goes into this. So I'm looking to see the chemistry between those guys and with their players that are out there on the field. Both sides of the ball have called it year two of the same offense and defense. But I'd imagine they're going to have their own unique twists. And remember Josh Gaddis, man. His first year as a coordinator looked a lot different than last year. It took him a couple years to really get in a rhythm. So the urgency for Michigan to try to repeat is to get Sharon Moore and Matt Weiss up to speed as soon as possible. They're going to have all the weapons at their disposal offensively. It's the same story for me as it was when we did our first show last year. I think this offensive line is going to be the foundation of their team. You return 3 starters and then you add a Remington Award finalist at center and Olu Oluwatimi. And then you have Trente Jones, a guy they're high on, with depth too across the offensive line. It's like, okay, let's watch how these big boys, work together and generate holes for Blake and Donovan, including the tight ends, how much movement they're creating, because man, when you can run the ball, it's just so much easier. Look at that Purdue and Penn State game last night. It feels like you're just struggling trying to complete these 15-yard passes down the field. You sit a little more comfortable in your seat when you see the offense breaking off 6-yard runs and 10-yard runs and 12-yard runs. It's just
Purdue
easier.
was doing it until they decided they were going to stop doing it.
Listen, man, and then Purdue has the ball, a 6-minute. They had the ball twice in the last 6 minutes and passed it 11 times and threw it once. Like, I get it, Jeff Brom. I get it. Trust me. I know that you want to throw that ball and you like Aiden O'Connell, but my goodness, I would love to see them mix in some draws or some complimentary run plays, understanding the defense knows you want to pass it. It's just like, it's hard. You're really trying to swim upstream when the defense knows everything you're going to do. But as far as that goes for Michigan, that's what I'm looking for.
Eric All Sr. Responded to me on Twitter and said Purdue is just trying to lose this damn game, and they really did.
Yeah, sometimes you lose games as much as you win games. So yeah, that one. Penn State won that one too, though. Sean Clifford had a gutsy drive down there. For all the slack that guys gets, man, he made some big throws and big moments, and he's certainly taken his beatings throughout the career. So it's like, hey, man, I'll always tip my cap to a guy like that to stay in the game. He's tough as nails. Would like to see him be a little bit more accurate. Would like to see Penn State help him out by getting him into 3rd and short rather than 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, which they lived in the second half. Or, we talk about third down offense, Isaiah. One thing people don't talk about, how about you avoid 3rd down altogether? How about you break off a 5-yard run, then a 7-yard run, and it's first? That's what great offenses do, is they avoid 3rd down altogether. But just to tie it back into Michigan, man, there's so many weapons. I just want to see how, a good painter has the colors of the rainbow, right? An average painter sees they're working with the same colors. An average painter puts it on the canvas and you're like, okay, like that's colors coming together. A good painter then takes those colors and paints the Mona Lisa, where whoever walks into a building says, okay, that's a beautiful piece of art. That to me as a coordinator is taking everything you have and putting it together where everyone can watch the tape and be like, okay, these guys are a force to be reckoned with. That's what I want to see from the offensive standpoint.
Now, the thing that I'm very curious about going into this particular game, I guess really any game, is how Michigan manages the offense in terms of like, listen, I'm not that concerned about Matt Weiss. I know it's his first time. It's him and Sharon. We're going to learn a lot here in the next 24 plus hours. But Matt Weiss coming from the Baltimore Ravens, as I've said before, I expect that if you were a position coach at an NFL team, you probably... You're
thinking Jesse Minter, though, from the Baltimore Ravens, correct?
Well, no, Weiss also came from the Ravens. Weiss as well? Yeah, okay. He came from the Ravens. He came into Michigan last year, but he was a Baltimore Ravens guy the year before.
John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh, just dicing them back and forth, baby. Okay, good call. All right.
Exactly. So
Minter, they talk about the Baltimore Ravens tree, but Matt Weiss is also familiar with the Ravens. Okay, cool.
Right. Exactly.
Should have known that.
He was the run game coordinator in Baltimore, overseeing the most prolific run offense that the NFL has ever seen 2 years running.
Nice.
So I feel good about his capability. What I am skeptical about is how do you appease so many guys when Jim Harbaugh is out there listing 10 wide receivers and 8 tight ends, and then you still got your 2 main running backs, and then you list 3 more. How do you get so many guys the ball? There's one ball, unless Jim Harbaugh has found some kind of loophole where Michigan gets to play with 2 footballs, which would not surprise me if he figured out that loophole. And suddenly you see Cade and JJ out there at the same time, both taking snaps and getting to different receivers and running backs and all of that. How do you, because like on the teams that you were on in Ann Arbor, there were a couple good players. I mean, you were the primary tight end. You know, you had AJ behind you, and you know he was obviously very good. But
Amara, J.U.
Yeah, it was Amara, J.U., Grant Perry. That was, I mean, there were more, but that was really kind of it, right?
Yeah.
When it came to like, who are the main guys we are going to get the ball to? It was you, AJ, Amara, J.U., Grant Perry, and then Davion Smith, and usually like 1 or 2 other backs.
Yeah. Ty Isaac, Karan Higdon, Justice Hayes when we were juniors, you know, probably missing some guys there. Sione was in there running the ball a couple of times. Our fullback, Sione Homa. Listen, man, I you know, and you want this out of your guys. I wanted 10 targets a game, man, minimum, because I just felt I seriously was going to win every rep. And even if I didn't win, I just felt so confident I was going to come down with the ball. But you know, there was games where I caught 1 pass or no passes or 2 passes. I just wanted to win, you know, I just wanted to win. So I think guys, now that they got a taste of what that ring feels like, it's like, hey man, listen, we're going to give everybody opportunities too. Is everybody's going to get their targets? Can you then break a tackle and do something special with it? That's what we're all looking for here. And the guys that do something special, we're going to continue to come back to you at that point in time. So everybody's got a role, man. The goal is to win at the end of the day. You know, as far as the passing game goes, I was thinking about this. They were airing that thing out last year, remember? And then when Ronnie Bell went down, the identity of the offense really changed because I think they felt like, hey, we just lost one of our biggest go-getters, our guy that we knew could win in all situations. We could just toss it up to. When he went down, there felt like there was a lesser inclination to throw the ball, I guess, you know? So I know they feel really good. I've watched these guys in practice. Like, man, they got talent from top to bottom at receiver. Tight ends are talented. There's a couple of young fellas there at tight end that I'm like, man, this position group's going to be studs for a year to come. And then, man, how many running backs? You pick your poison who you want to go in there. So there's a lot of weapons. We're going to give you opportunities, and then it's what you do with those opportunities, man. At the end of the day, this game of football, you're only guaranteed an opportunity to prove yourself, you know, and then it's on you to do something with that opportunity. And if you do something with it, we'll keep coming back to you.
It's kind of like if you drop a ball, sorry, that was your chance.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like Michigan likely will not be in a situation like it was with Penn State and Purdue yesterday. It was particularly Penn State, where it seemed like so many receivers were just dropping balls left and right. If it's at Michigan right now with this many playmakers, it's kind of like, oh, you dropped the ball and there's all these other guys behind you. Well, next.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, we have very limited time left here. Zoom is telling me.
Yeah.
So we're going to move on, finish out the preview here in just a moment. All right. So, Jake, this is, I mean, weeks like next week, we're not going to have you next week. You're going to be too busy preparing for Michigan, Hawaii. This is a special. Right. This isn't the every week like it was last year. But that said, you're not calling a game this week. So we don't have to Kirk Herbstreit or Joel Klatt your opinion of what's going to happen in this game, you can actually give us a bit more insight than what you see if you're watching College Game Day and all of that. So what do you think is going to happen in this game now that Michigan's about to take on Colorado State?
I think it's just going to be a clean win. I think at this point, it's like you're still trying to figure some things out. There's convincing wins, and then there's just clean, good team wins where you build your confidence, but you still realize there's more to be found. So what I would expect is again, the offensive line is going to be dominant. The run game is going to look good. I'd imagine they average 5 or more yards per carry. I would hope so. And then we're going to get to just a little taste of the ball being spread around to different tight ends, different receivers. And we're going to be left with, kind of like a cliffhanger, like, okay, I'm really excited to see more of this guy. I'm really excited to see this guy in bigger games and bigger situations, because ultimately that's where you find out about it. And then defensively, I'd be shocked if they play a perfect game this early. But, I think that's the standard that they should ask of themselves. And, being around in practice, you're not going to see a guy like Aiden Hutchinson just flash where you're like, okay, this guy is clearly a first round pick in the NFL. But you don't necessarily need to have that to have a good defense. You can play unit defense. And what I mean by that is so much of defense is trusting the guy next to you to do his job so you can do your job. A good defense is gap sound defense, where the nose, he's going to protect the A gap. That linebacker has the B gap. That 3 technique over the guard has the C gap. The ends have contained, and you all just play your gap sound, and there's nowhere for the offense to go. That's so much of trust and execution. So last year, you didn't need to go deep in the playbook to make plays, because you could have Hutch and Ojabo wreck the game off the edge. This year, they're going to have to get a little bit deeper and more creative in how they can make the opposing offense uncomfortable. It's imperative that they stay gap sound and discipline. Last year, some of the problems that they had, was guys just losing their eyes. The Michigan State game, they let up a big play on 4th and inches. Nebraska, they gave up a play to the tight end, a critical touchdown. And that, to me, was just a lack of discipline with your eyes in critical situations. You don't have the talent this year to make up for that necessarily, at least unproven at this point. So guys are going to need to trust each other and really focus on their job. And then you ultimately have a good product on defense.
Yeah, I think what I'm looking at here, I think the defense will surprise some people, but I think it's going to be a challenge, particularly in the secondary. Because looking at Colorado State and some of the players that they have one starting wide receiver who was at Colorado State last year. And he's the low man on the totem pole. The other 2 were transfers. I believe one was from Nevada, and then actually I think both of them were from Nevada. And they both had more receiving yards than Michigan's leading receiver last year, which was Cornelius Johnson. I think Michigan's secondary is going to get a little bit tested, and conversely, I think that they're going up against a relatively okay secondary. So I think this is a good test for Cade, because I think Hawaii is going to be kind of like that's going to be kind of going up against air, for JJ McCarthy. So I think it's a better thing that the secondary is going to really test the mettle of Cade McNamara. Now, fans, they might not see it that way, right? Because I do think this Colorado State secondary is going to prove to end up being a pretty good unit. So I think it's going to be a situation where they're going to see JJ really being able to air it out against Hawaii with a lot of ease, whereas this one might not look so good. But running the ball, I think Michigan will be able to run the ball fine. So, yep. All right, we've only got a couple seconds left here. So, Jake, can you give me a score prediction?
I'm going to say Michigan puts up a good amount of points. I'm going to give them 45 points. I'm going to say the defense takes a little bit to get going. So I'm going to go with 45-17 Michigan. And I think that'd be a good clean win. You'd put it on tape and say, we have a lot, we have good things that we can build upon. And then we definitely still have things we can work on. I'd almost rather them not be perfect, so these guys can be humbled and remember, like, hey, we got to go prove we're the Big Ten champions again this year. You want them to be good, but then still maintain that hunger that they go back to practice next week and have a bunch to work on, understanding they want to repeat as Big Ten championships, repeat as Big Ten champions and beat Ohio State once again and clean up on Michigan State this year too.
You know what? I'm not that far off. And it's funny because I think that with either of our scores, it'll be enough to get the fan base to complain because it's not perfect.
Always.
I'm going 51-13. I think they get a touchdown, 2 field goals at Colorado State. And I think Michigan puts them away early. I think it's reminiscent of 2016 when it's like the game's over by halftime. And then, I'd say like 28 points at the half for Michigan. And then after that, I think it ends up being, we see some garbage time struggles here and there, but it still ends up putting up a bit of points. So that's where I'm at. All right. So for the Big Ten Network analyst, I almost said Big Ten Championship Network, but I mean, it is.
I wish.
The Big Ten Network analyst, Jake Butt. I'm Isaiah Wolf. Thank you for joining us on this special Big Butt-Hole preview. I will be back next week. Jake will be on Big Ten Network. So look forward to that. I'm sure a lot of you, anyone who's not in the stadium, will be watching. Thanks for watching and or listening today. Peace.